Hey, it's Aaron. I've got a pretty good question here from Double Digit, which is a cool name. Um, he wants to know, I assume it's a he, could be a she, I don't know. Anyway, gender neutral here. I'll try, I'm not good at that. Anyway, the question is, what is the first ever built electric vehicle in the world and what company built it? So that's a really cool question. So the first electric car is usually credited to a Scotsman named Robert Anderson. Uh, and this electric powered carriage was made in the 1830s, sometime between 1832 and 1839. It's hard to source a date for this. There are no photographs because the camera didn't exist yet, and there are really just some, tiny, scanty little news stories about it, and it's hard to pin down a date for that. The most reliable newspaper account is probably from 1837. So that's the date that most people assume this happened. Um, the descriptions of it say that it used power cells and they had to be replaced on depletion, and it could move at the pace of a trotting horse. Uh, so power cells were common before the battery was really invented. So power cells were a sort of battery, but they were kind of a hybrid between a battery and a uh, uh, fuel cell. So what they did was they just created power based on the chemicals that were in them. An example of a power cell would be the things that have been found in Egyptian digs, where they found those pots that have a copper rod in them and stuff. And that's a sort of power cell. This is a more advanced version of that. Obviously, it had to put out a little more oomph to do that. But it's interesting that this car would have come out very shortly after the electric motor itself was invented. Um, and then shortly after, or maybe even simultaneous to it, depending on what date is chosen for the Robert Anderson's car. So if it's a little bit later than that 1837 date, then you have another guy, a Dutchman named, I gotta look at this name because this is complicated. Sebrandus Strating. I assume I'm saying that right. Um, he also invented a similar vehicle by description with a similar power source. This was one of those things where it's kind of an obvious thing, invention, right? It's one of those things where, hey, we've got this and we've got this, we can make that now. Just, an obvious leap in technology. Um, Not too long after that, Andreas Jedlick, a Hungarian scientist and inventor, uh, is credited with making the first modern EV. Um, but that's kind of iffy because he never actually wrote about it and he never published anything or journaled anything about it. So it's probably as much folktale as reality. He may not have actually done it, but he did invent the electric motor. And the electric motor is what gave Robert Anderson and the Dutchman Sebrandus gave them the ability to create their cars. So at the very least, the Andreas Jedlick should be given the kudos for making the electric car possible. Then 1865, you got Gaston Plonte, who was a Frenchman, who made the first rechargeable battery, which was the next big step in electric vehicles. So there you go. That's kind of the timelines there. None of these are companies. These are all inventors. And so far as I know, none of them made them for production purposes. So they didn't make more than one or two. But that's kind of the timeline of electric vehicles in their very, very early infancy. It's worth noting that the going by Robert Anderson, the first electric vehicle would have actually predated the first gasoline-powered vehicle. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, there you go. Hope that answers the question. It's as much as I could come up with. You got a question. I know you do. So you're going to ask it. You're going to hit me up in the comments down there. You're going to find me on Facebook, Twitters, or whatever, and you're going to DM me, and you're going to ask that question, and I'm going to do my best to answer it. Talk to you again soon.